Welcome to the Afghanistan Project podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and today I'm so excited to bring on Lori Butierries. Lori is a full-time caregiver to 2 children with disabilities. She uses her life experiences and the medical knowledge she gained from serving as a hospital corpsman in the United States Navy to help others facing similar hardships. Lori has written for the Havok Journal, AwareNow Magazine, and The Mighty. Likewise, other news sites like MSN and Yahoo News have also republished selected articles that Lori has written. Lori's writing extends to children's literature. Her debut picture book, Gift from God, was self-published at the beginning of 2021 and placed as a finalist in 2 categories in the 2021 Next Generation Indie Book Awards, which I think is so cool. Lori's long-term goals are to use her writing to educate others about, advocate for, and dismantle negative stereotypes regarding disability, mental health, and the military and veteran community. Lori, I'm so pleased to have you. We're going to talk about your incredible deployment to Afghanistan and your advocacy for Afghans now. So it's really a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thanks, Beth. Thanks for having me.
As I said, it is such an honor. Like when I found out, so many of you who are listening may know about the female engagement teams that were a really vital asset in our effort inside of Afghanistan, just because of the cultural sensitivity of working alongside women. And Lori, you were part of the predecessor to that group. And I would love for you to talk about, first off, what was the group and how would you describe it to somebody? Why was it important? And then let's talk about when you found out that you were going to be doing it.
So the group, we were just labeled female searchers. We were just attachments to BLT-16. We actually went out with the grunts into the field. We weren't just at a FOB, and I shouldn't say just, like I don't want to minimize anybody who's been at a FOB, but we were actually out on the front lines, humping around through the mountains with the grunts. Or I should say infantry probably is probably a little more polite. But
we don't have to be polite here. It's totally cool.
So when we got to Afghanistan, when we landed, within, I'd say, a couple weeks of having gotten in theater, they're like, hey, we need women to go out with us to win the hearts and minds of the locals. We can't be touching the females, even though we are aware that women are hiding, intel, ammunition, weapons. Sometimes men are dressing up in the burqas. And so they're like, we have to have this with us. Like right off the bat, there was no, like they had begun operations and then discovered this was a problem. They just knew this was going to be an issue and decided this is what we were going to do. But, and then we were voluntold. We had a meeting, the CO of the 22nd MSP called a meeting, said, hey ladies, guess what? I'm totally paraphrasing. He's like, this is the plan and this is what you will be doing. And there was a lot of mixed reactions because that's not what the women signed up for. Like, so there were a lot, some were crying, some were thrilled, especially a lot of the Marines, female Marines were like, yes, this is what, this is what we signed up for. This opportunity. Mm-hmm. I was scared, but I was excited. And so I'm trying to, sorry, Beth, I jumped around.
No, that's perfect. So yeah, the timing. So it sounds like you got to Afghanistan and that's when you were told, and that's when you started getting ready to go, because I've read a couple articles that you sent me. I mean, you guys were PTing with the Marines, correct? So when did that start, when they told you, hey, you're going to do this, that like now you need to be able to do all these things? Like, tell me about that process of getting ready to go do that.
So I have to back up.
Yeah.
And just from the beginning, I didn't get attached to the MU until a couple weeks before they left. There was a female corpsman that I replaced who I had a medical issue. So I missed all the workups, all the special operation trainings. I missed everything.
Oh, wow.
And so So I had a very hard time integrating, just because I was unfamiliar with what really the MU is and what to expect. They're just like, hey, you're a girl, you'll do. So they picked me and I got attached. And then when we got, to Afghanistan, there was no additional training. I think that we had the MPs come out and like show us like what a search looks like and how to do a takedown. And that was it for me. And I wasn't even told like where we would be going. I just knew what company I'd be attached to, which was Charlie Company initially, but not like what the mission was. I knew it was supposed to be a 10-day off, which wound up I got it extended for 52 days total, I think, in the field. And so that 10-day off was, I guess we should have anticipated changes, but we didn't. A lot of us did not come prepared for a longer journey than 10 days out in the field. So menstruation became an issue, meds became an issue, and it was such a mess, but it worked at the same time. Like, we were able to handle each problem as they arose and continue forward and moving on and doing our jobs. But so I just wanted to touch on that, just so you knew, like, what my mindset was and what was going on. Like, I was very much not in the know.
Yeah.
And so I just was scared and confused, like, the whole time, and just trying to keep up and not be the weakest link and not be a problem. You never want to be that person.
No, that's incredible. And it's funny. So there's an article you sent me about Charlie's Angels, and they talk about, it's so flippant, and yet, as you've just mentioned it, like, you guys ran out of tampons, and like, oh my gosh, what happens now? And it was such a brief remark, but you're right. It's one of those things that when you talk, I used to date a Marine, and there would be long conversations about should women be in the infantry, and those kinds of things, and infantrymen have lots of opinions about women in those situations, and that's one of the things they bring up, right? Is what about dealing with cycles that women go through every month? And so what was the workaround that you established for that? Because obviously you figured it out. Like, it didn't end your time.
So initially I went and I confiscated the tampons the other corpsmen, the male corpsmen, carried in their bags for bullet hole wounds.
Yeah.
Now, I was always told that was a myth, like, we didn't really do that, but the men carried them with them. So I went and confiscated their tampons. And then after that, we just used the napkins that were in the MREs. But eventually the CO and the first sergeant for Charlie Company were debating who was the radio in for resupplies. And they were, both of them, not wanting to do it. And finally, the first sergeant told the CO to F off. He wasn't going to do it. And so the CO radioed in for some feminine hygiene products, and we eventually got them. And I was able to give back the supplies to the men that I had raided their bags for, But it was really human. We just laughed. Like, that had to be the first time the combat infantry units ever radioed in for tampons.
That's so funny, and it's just so human, and you dealt with it, right? Like, it wasn't, everything comes to a standstill and nobody can get by. I mean, think about it. In Afghanistan, most places they weren't using those anyway. You figure it out. Like, if you're a resourceful woman, you've already figured out how to deal with that when emergencies take place. So you're just dealing with more. That's really interesting. Let's talk about the real meat and potatoes, though, of what it was, because that's just one thing that, is happening that you have to get. It's not like life doesn't stop when you're a woman and it's that time of the month. Like, you're still doing all the other things you're doing. So what was the preparation, the physical preparation, like, compared to what you were used to in your job as a corpsman, getting ready to go out and hump with the guys and all of that? How was that process for you?
There was no preparation. There was none. Like, I had just graduated field medical service school. And when I was in field med, they're like, don't worry, all you need to know is the stuff for the test. Women never go into combat. You'll be at the back with whoever, or at a clinic, or, you'll never have to implement this information. So I literally learned it for the test and did like a data dump. So when I was out with the grunts in the field and I offered to go on a patrol with them, I was so lost. They're doing the hand signals for the different formations. I'm like, and I'm just trying to watch and see where they're going so I could figure out the pattern and where I needed to go, because I completely forgot the information, because I was told you'll never need this. And so I believed them. And that was a big mistake. It was dumb on my part. So, but even like PT and stuff, when we got to Afghanistan, we started running around the base, but nobody had prepped beforehand. Like, it was just as soon as we got in country, like I said, the week or two before we went out with the infantry, we did a couple runs, as MSSG, excuse me. But, that was about it. It was nothing. It was so intense and it was so hard. I'm like, I don't know how the men do this, like, regularly, just carrying all your gear, humping, and not just the combat gear, but your packs, and you're carrying everything you're going to use the entire time you're out. That's if it wasn't in the trucks. Sometimes we had to leave our gear in the trucks and we do hikes, but a lot of times we were carrying our gear, and then you have your helmet, your flak, your weapon, your ammo, your food, your water, your everything. And so it was intense. And you're talking like it's just a flat road. I mean, it's very rocky terrain, 120 degrees sometimes. And it was very intense. I just was astounded that I could do it. I guess when you don't have a choice, you continue on. But like just the mind fuck it is, because your mind wants to give up more before your body ever will quit. And so just trying to tell yourself, over and over again, it's just one more step. Wow. So it was not a short distance.
No. How did the infantry feel about, I mean, they knew that you were there to help them, but obviously that you hadn't trained to be like them. So were they patient with you as you were trying to figure out how to get with their program?
They were so funny. We had one officer per company. Like, so I was with Charlie Company, and then we had a female officer with us, and then we had one officer with Alpha Company, and then the rest of us, there's 5, so 12 total, 6 per company. And I guess they assumed that the female officer would take charge, but my company, she did not. She's like, I'm not in charge, and we were not assigned to a fire team, a squad, a platoon. We were just on our own, just sitting off to the side for the most part until they called us. So like when we did get into firefights, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know. I was like, wait, what do I do? They're like, just stay in the truck. Things are blowing up. I'm like, I am not staying in the truck. I got out of that truck, and I started running around looking for cover. But we just didn't belong to anybody. They didn't know what to do with us. They're very nice, very courteous. They just ignored us if they could. They just didn't know like how to interact with us. We didn't train. We didn't do any workups with them. And if we had, I'm sure it would have been different. But we were more of a liability in that regard. Like if we were clearing homes and stuff, like they didn't know how we would operate in that situation. They were unfamiliar with us.
Sure. What about, I've heard Taliban members know who's out, right? And you, the female searchers, were instructed actually to wear their hair down or to wear pigtails or like something that identified you as women so that people would realize. Did you ever find that the Taliban then were attempting to go after you, or would they not do that? I mean, did you have any indication that you were extra wanted by the Taliban?
There was one time we were doing like a humanitarian not assistance, like it was just like we came to the village and while we're here, let's offer some aid. And then we had to pack up really quick because they had said that they knew there was a female with them and they were interested in that there was a female with them. And then we left. So that was the only time that I was made aware of that. If there had been other times, they didn't disclose it. Mm-hmm. Probably just didn't want to freak us out.
Sure. I mean, because they respect women, right? So much that they don't want to see you or whatever. And so I could see it both ways where they would say, well, don't go after the women, or where they would say, that's not really a woman because she's, the Taliban are such an interesting group. I would wonder what their stance would be. So that's obviously they recognized, it sounds like, that this was happening. And so how many firefights would you say there were? I mean, that sounds like it was somewhat of a regular occurrence where you're having to figure out, okay, how do I stay safe?
So, in one of them, the missions kept getting extended. And I didn't realize until like many, many years later, we were doing different operations. Like, yeah. And so why we got extended, okay, this became a new operation. I had no clue, right? So looking back, I know that Operation Asbury Park is where we got into contact with the enemy. And I personally was involved in 4 or 5. I'd have to look at my journal. I kept a journal. I was deployed, engagements with the enemy. And it was intense, and some of them lasted for hours. I mean, you're trapped in a compound. They've got you pinned. You're waiting for air support. You're just getting fired upon. Like it was terrifying. And you don't want to show that. Like you don't want to spaz and that's the thing too. Like when we were coming into our first engagement, like how am I going to react? Am I going to scream? Am I going to freeze? Am I going to be a liability? Because that's always your biggest concern. Like. And the men's worst nightmare. Like, we have women with us. Are we going to have to protect them? Are we going to have to stop what we're doing to manage them or whatever? So no, I didn't. I thank God. Like when they started running, I started running. I like whatever they were doing, I did. Like it's like okay, like just follow the leader. And that happened. Like when after they lit up the mountain and then the Taliban retreated, we went into the mountain to look for survivors and wounded. And I went with them. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm just gonna go with you." They're like, "Okay." And so I did. I went up with them, looking around, and just kind of to the back, just walking, and then I stumbled into an opening, not like a cave, but it was an opening, a little enclosure, and there was an Afghan civilian there. It was just him and me. We're just staring at each other. There was no Marine around me. I don't even know if the man had a weapon because I was so focused on his face, and him and I were both in shock, staring at each other. And we didn't move. I don't know for how long. It felt like an eternity. We're just staring at each other. And so a Marine stumbled in behind me, and then the gentleman up and shot past me, and my Marine that was with me asked for permission to shoot. He was not granted permission in time, and the gentleman escaped. But I was like, if I got captured, they wouldn't even know I was gone. I don't report to anybody. There's nobody. I'm not part of a team. Like, so if I was missing, it would have been noticed for quite a while.
Wow.
And that was a little scary revelation.
Yeah. And then where would you, I guess the question I would say when they asked you, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, what else, where would I go? Would I just stand here in the middle of a place by myself as a woman inside of Afghanistan? Like, of course I'm going to follow you. You're my best shot at protection. Wow.
That was my first engagement.
Okay. Wow. What others? I wonder who that guy was now. That's gonna.
Yeah.
I imagine that's one of the things you think about often, and just it's like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you, sir? What other notable things happened? Any other notable firefights or times when things hit the fan?
Oh yes. We had an ambush where we were taking a convoy through the mountains on a path where it just was nothing next to the path, right? Like we're going through a pass, and then the road, there was just a drop, so you couldn't back up. So the Taliban or the insurgents took out the lead vehicle, and then the AMA, we were with the militia, they ran. They left their vehicles in the kill zone, so we had no way of getting out of the kill zone, right? Because of where they had parked their vehicle.
Yeah.
And so we had to dismount. This is when I asked the sergeant, what do I do? And he's like, just stay in the truck. I'm like, the things are blowing up left and right. I can't see because of the canvas covering. And I'm like, looking around, there's ammo all beneath me. I'm like, I don't think so. Nope, I am not staying put. So I get out, draw my 9mm, start running around, looking for rocks to dunk behind. And then I hear some random voice from nowhere going, Doc, what are you going to do with that? Put that away. I'm like, okay, good point. So I put it away. And then he makes me run the same authoritative Marine. I don't know who he was, but he sounded like he knew what he was doing. Tells me to go run to one of the vehicles that has a mounted gun on it, where the gunny was. And so I go running towards the gun, and he sees me coming. It's like, so he hauls me into the truck, and then he like shoves me down. and mind you, like bullets are just raining. There's raining down upon us from the mountains, right? And I'm just like, oh my gosh! And then of course the casings. Hot casings are falling, and I'm jumping up because they're falling down my blouse. Gunny's yelling at me again because I'm putting myself in danger. So I'm just laying there, just getting hit by the hot casings. Like, oh my God, it's so loud. And again, air support got called, so I do not know how long. I just remember just rocking and the smells from the guns, and just burning and just wondering, is this it? Like, is this how I'm going out? And so eventually, air support pushed them back. Taliban went and ran again. That's what they do. And then the Marines chased them down, though, which they're not used to, I guess. And so this time I didn't go with them. I stayed in the truck because I felt like it was the first time I felt like in that time frame, like I wasn't. What's the word I'm looking for? Like I've said liability several times, but yes, like as a woman in the field, like I didn't feel like I was helping, and they didn't know what to do with me.
Sure.
So I just stayed put at that point.
But you did help in other ways. And so let's talk about the ways that you did help because, obviously you have to get to the places. What would the Marines have done? What would have happened if there hadn't been searchers to help make sure that, things weren't getting passed through women, do you think?
Oh, I think the men would have rioted. There's no way they would have allowed that to happen. Like, there would have been tons of conflict and more opposition to the Marines' presence. And that's certainly not what they were hoping for, right? And so I was very fortunate that we were able to come out and do that. Although it was hard though, Beth. Like, you're young, you're naive, you think you're there to you're fight the terrorists and you're doing this great thing and you're here to help and but these people in the mountains, some of them didn't even know they were at war. Some of them had no idea about 9/11, America. Like, are you Russian? I think one of them asked us, and I'm like, no. And so that was kind of hard. Like, these people are some are completely innocent and just don't know anything that's happening when you talk politically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're searching them, they're so scared, and some of them are whimpering, and you just feel like an ogre, I felt I felt like a bad guy. Like, I felt like the foreign invaders that really we were. But at the time, like when I initially started, though, I was like, we're here to do this just cause, and we're gonna help these people, and not that they were looking for help, not in these remote villages. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that was hard. So, and then you're like, I'm trying to win your hearts and minds, and yet here I am roping you down and grabbing your crotch, and not grabbing, but you know what I'm saying, like you're doing the credit card swipe, but it's still very invasive and traumatic for some of these ladies. And then you're trying to, like, at the one time I'm guarding them after the fact, and then I'm trying to smile, and most of them avoided my look, but this one stared me down and just was so angry, and I just had to look away because I would be too in her situation.
Yeah.
And so I personally never found a man or intel or weaponry. I know some of the other ladies did who continued on. So I got pulled after 52 days. I got pulled out of the field. I was told to stop hogging all the glory. And so they replaced me with another female.
Oh, wow.
Which is fine. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really appreciate saying that. I was like, I'm not hogging. Nobody wanted to stay out here.
Yeah, let's go back to where, so you were voluntold at first, but at some point it became, and actually I wanted to ask about this before because I feel like it's a pertinent point to bring it up. One of the women who was being searched, according to the articles you sent me, I mean, peed out of fear that, somebody was touching her in that way. I mean, it's such a, like, that's a violation to them. I mean, it's really culturally difficult. I don't think I would enjoy, I don't like going to the airport because I don't like people touching all over me, so, but in that culture is even more, so definitely difficult. But yeah, you decided to extend yourself. When did that happen, when it was time to decide if you wanted to stay or should you go?
So we were in between missions, and one of the ladies wound up hurting her knee. So she had to get flown out and go back to the FOB. FOB Indian Head, which was later renamed FOB Payne after one of our gentlemen died. One of our, I want to say he was Corporal, maybe a Lance Corporal, Corporal Payne. Anyways, we got back from that mission and we had to turn her in. I don't know what was stated. All I know is that rumors of mistreatment had begun. Because, like, for instance, we were doing, foreign search operations, and after we got done searching this village late into the evening, we had to leave, but we were too far from our rendezvous point to meet up with the convoy, so we had to sleep in the mountains. And mind you, your uniform is soaking wet from the heat, right? So you're in the desert, and the temperatures just drop. So you're shivering, you're so cold, and you're just laying on rock and goat shit everywhere goat shit. So it was really tough, but it wasn't like it was just us that were suffering, going through. The men were doing the same thing. Like, we were all going through the same exact hardships. But I guess the female that wound up getting hurt had complained about what she had endured, and so they were saying, oh, we weren't being taken care of, we were being mistreated, and so they were going to pull all the women out. And then the CO of the BLT was like, no, we can't. We need women. So we need at least 6 so that we can divvy up between the company and the CAT team. Mm-hmm. And so they'd asked for 6 of us to stay, and I was one of them that volunteered to stay behind, just because I wasn't as affected as some of the other ladies.
Wow. And so then, what was that? Did that change anything after you, or was it all the same?
No. So then I got divvied up. So I was with Charlie Company originally, And they are like big brothers, really welcoming, you know, I mean, essentially, like they, for the most part, ignored us, but like the command element and stuff were really, you know, accepting of us. We go to Alpha Company, myself and Captain Marte, there's two of us now, two per company, and then cat team, two per cat team. And then we're so angry, so angry, because they were like, we didn't do anything, we didn't say anything, like we were on our best behavior. And so they wanted nothing to, you could just feel the animosity, like you could just feel this tension in the air, and it was very hard, because like as a corpsman, like some of the men were suffering from heat exhaustion or heat stroke, and I was there and I could assist, and they wouldn't let me touch them. Well, nothing to do with me. Even though I wasn't there in that capacity to be a corpsman, I was there to be a female searcher, but like I had training, I could assist, you know, wouldn't let me touch them. Would rather just fall out and just suffer than let me near them. And that was so hard. Like, I didn't say anything. I didn't do it. Like, I'm right here with you, buddy, you know? And so it was, I mean, after a while, like, you know, shared misery has a way of bringing you together. And so after a while, they thawed out, especially after I went on that patrol that I told you about, where I was like, oh my God, like, and I made it through. And I think they were fucking with me, because the length of that patrol and the mountains that we climbed, like, I was the last one up this mountain, and they were like, woo, dog! And I was like, oh my God, like, I was embarrassed because I was on my hands and knees crawling. You know? But they were happy that I made it, and then after that, they seemed to, like, be okay with me in particular. I can't speak for Captain Mark here and any of the other ladies, but with me, like, it seemed to thaw some ice.
Wow. That's a good thing. And so you kept on going. I mean, you were there how long until they decided that, no, we don't particularly need you?
So I was out 52 days.
How many after the new? So yeah, tell me about those next days. I mean, what happened that they decided you're out, like you're done? I'm struggling to understand.
After Operation Asbury Park, now mind you, Operation Asbury Park was when we were having all those engagements with the enemy. Now this is the stuff that people found interesting. This is the stuff people wanted to get involved in, and it made its way back. And I had received an award at one point when we went to the FOB, and so now, like, they're seeing, oh, there's accolades, oh, there's good things that are happening, oh, this is interesting, you know what I mean? It's not just boring coordinate search operations, or, you know what I mean, humping around the mountains, just wasting time in the desert, you know? And so then people were complaining about wanting to go out, and so I had an S3 officer when I went back to Kandahar for just a break between emissions, saying, you know, you're done, you're not going back out. You know, you're hogging all the glory, and I'm so caught off guard. And I was like, that's fine, but I didn't know anybody else wanted to go out, and so that's how that worked.
That's so strange to me. Like, here, we're telling you got to do this. Here's this insane set of things you have to go through to do this, and now we're gonna say, oh no, you know, we need these people, and now no, you're getting too much attention for what you're doing. I think I read, and please correct me if I'm wrong, in one of these articles it said something about how it was like a year after the searchers were employed before anybody did anything further, or like, you know, did I read that or am I making that up?
No, so like with the PET teams, you mean?
Yeah, it was like just this, like, oh yeah, we did it, and then nothing happened. Is that true?
When I did the same reading, right? Like, I was researching about the female searchers, and from what I understand, and not just, I mean, and the gossip, of course, that came down the pipeline, was that because of the controversy with Colonel Khan, he's the CEO of the BLT.
Yeah.
He had made friends with a shady warlord, and he, I guess, had been abusive towards his officers, and maybe some locals had been abused as well. So there was some controversy, right, involved with the MU, and especially this Operation Mountain Storm, that they didn't want to, they just kind of want to put it underneath the rug, like sweep it underneath the rug and be done with that whole thing. Like, he was relieved of duty, and that was that, and we don't need to talk about anything else about Operation Mountain Storm, right? And so any of the positives that were learned were discarded as well.
Okay.
So they didn't pursue, like, the female searchers. They didn't take those lessons and move forward with them based upon our experiences.
I wonder if the fact that his call sign was Genghis might have, like, you know, warned people of of things, but that just, now that I'm thinking about things, it's kind of funny. That's so the military in my mind. When it comes to all of these things, we have good ideas and then we have to reinvent them down the line. And so somebody obviously stumbled on this and decided, okay, we need vets. But what happened? I'm wondering what happened in the interim. I mean, what happened in other units where they needed women to search Afghan women, or were they just using men? Do you know anything about that answer? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I apologize. I wish I'd followed up on that, but I did not.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge question to ask a single person. That's like ask the historian of the army or something kind of question. So please, you don't need to know that answer, but it's one I want to go find out. But tell me how the FETs then, what would become the FETs? How do you think, what do you think they did better? What do you think maybe they didn't do? Like, how would you compare them to those efforts?
The training. I mean, they had training it was specialized to this type of situation. And so that made all the difference in the world. And I guess they not just trained amongst themselves, but with the units they were going to deploy with. A huge difference, And so, in a nutshell, that would be the biggest thing that stands out is to their advantage.
Sure. I mean, because then if you're trained in just basic language skills, you can go out and be able to have a conversation and break down those barriers that kept you from being able to converse with the woman who was giving you, I'm going to murder you with my eyes, and bringing things, I think, being able to do the humanitarian aid types of transfers, like there's just an extra level that it seemed like FETs were able to do when they came into service because of, as you said, training. But at the same time, you couldn't have gotten those initial wins without the female searchers at all. And that's why I think it's incredible what you did with none of that training.
It's hard because I know I've spoken to some vets before, like online, like with women veteran groups and stuff, and they have called me a liar. And so basically it's accused me of like stolen valor type of situation. Like, so then I have to send the links to the articles, or I have to like Google images, in the National Archives and stuff. I'm like, I'm not making this up, like, because it's not been heard of. It was not well known, right? And so, and I was like, that was, again, just kind of hard to hear and kind of makes you feel some kind of way about your service and what you did, because at the time you really thought you were doing something meaningful and valuable, and then it's just nothing.
Are they upset because they feel like they're the first?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's the whole, it really is a big deal. Like being the first matter, like that's huge.
Yeah. And I mean, by any, I think you can both be the first, right? It's like you were the first attempt to help in a certain way, and they were the first attempt to broaden that, into something. I don't know that you couldn't have the FET without the searchers, right? And yet the FET became something slightly different. And then that's interesting because when I asked Gabby Southern Dice about they called themselves the FSTs at HKIA. And I said, were you guys like FETs? And she said, no, we got our idea from the FETs, but we did not call ourselves that for a reason. I think the FETs are very proud, as they should be. So, I mean, I can understand that, like, we did this thing, but you also did.
Right.
The predecessor to that thing.
Because we were embedded with the infantry. We were humping around the mountains. We weren't, like I said, at a fob that had already been cleared and set up, and we weren't just stationary checking checkpoints, vehicle checkpoints and stuff. Like, we were with the men out in the wilds of Afghanistan. And so that was a bit different too, I guess, according to my knowledge of how the FET ran and what they were doing in Afghanistan. And I could be wrong, but that's just what I've read,
That they had their own, like, little grouping and did their own.
Like,
I think
they were
one,
at the FOB,
yeah.
they were at the checkpoints, but they were at locations. They weren't moving.
They didn't have to drop in tampons for them.
Right. So that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
I guess that's the difference.
Yeah, but there should be glory enough for both of those groupings. That's, I think, we're short on that in this conflict because so few people actually care about it, right? That there is
Right.
so little glory and, God, I almost sounded Catholic for a second because I almost said glory and honor, and oh my Lord, I needed to start crossing myself. It was very weird, but there should be enough glory and, appreciation for everybody who took up that mantle and did what was required of them. I mean, you did not ask for it. You did not prepare for it, and you did it. And it's really incredible to hear about it. And I want to know, because I think this is a good time to transition into your relationship with Afghans, because it would be very easy. Before we were recording, I brought this up with you. It would be very easy to say, oh my gosh, we had to go and look for weapons because we knew that women were carrying weapons to keep them safe because men couldn't, search them. And you had women looking at you like you were the scum of the earth, basically. How did you feel, though, about the Afghan people when you were there?
So at one point I would be a lie to say I didn't get angry.
Yeah.
I know Kat Marte would take it upon herself to try to talk to women about women's rights and about the benefits of what we were doing here and what we were trying to accomplish. And I remember specifically one elderly lady, she's matriarch, speaking on behalf of the other women, right, through the interpreter. It was like, why would we want that? This is the way it's always been. And I was so enraged, I just left the room. Like, I just couldn't imagine, like, what are we doing here? What is our purpose here? And I'm going to die for nothing, And I went home initially with that thought. But as the years went by and we saw progress, my thoughts, my feelings kind of changed. Like, I'm like, okay, well, this is good. Like, I see changes wanted and changes happening. But it wasn't until the fall of Kabul, right, when I saw Crystal Bayat. She's an Afghan advocate marching through the streets of Afghanistan on Afghan's Independence Day. And she had told New York Times that she's speaking for a million voices that couldn't. And I just was so blown away by her courage in the face of immense danger that I just rallied to her cause. And those are the women that were still fighting after we all left and abandoned them. And so that's kind of where I've been ever since. I still talk to Crystal, and I have tried as my best to advocate for their needs by what's the word I'm looking for? Amplifying their voices, taking their message and just sharing it as best I can. And so I don't know if I'm just beating on a dead horse, but I don't care. It's better than not doing nothing.
Absolutely. See, I wonder if, because we didn't really talk about where you were, but you were in Uruzgan and Kandahar, correct? Or right near Kandahar. And that's the Pashtun heartland. That's where the Taliban come from. And it is definitely because, the Taliban are very restrictive of women, especially if you're in the villages where there aren't great big schools and, universities for people to go to. Like, yeah, you're going to have that insular village perspective, right? Where women have a role and it doesn't change. So you saw a particularly, not progressive view of women. But I wonder if you had been in like Kabul or the areas around Kabul, I'm thinking maybe even like Herat, if you would have seen different, participation, and I shouldn't say that all Pashtun heartland areas are like that, because if you look at like Pashtana Durrani, who is the the leader of the Baraksai clan, which is unheard of that there is a woman leader of a Pashtun clan, but and so young. And anyway, she managed to convince the village elders that no, girls do need to be educated, and here's why. The Quran says so. This is, another reason, and those ideas were changing over time, but it took all of the work that got done, right? It took you being there and showing that, okay, we understand this cultural sensitivity. It took what the Fets did. It took everything to get to where Crystal Bayat could go do that. And women could, live alone in an apartment in Kabul without a mahram, or just the leaps and bounds of change were enabled by all of the efforts of veterans like yourself. But it's incredible that you could have, said, forget this. I tried, and I think some veterans have said that. I tried, I'm done. But more veterans, at least the ones that I speak to, continue to beat that horse and try to help. So what are you, I know there's one group that you've been advocating for a lot lately, and it has to do with beauty, like the wearing red lipstick. I didn't want to take away your ability to talk about it, but tell me about that and why it's important.
So the red lipstick was just a sign of not just passion, but like resistance. And I guess it's been a form of resistance for many, many years in Germany. Back in the World Wars, they used it, and other such cases. And so the Afghan ladies I have spoken with recently, Huda, I cannot remember her last name.
Kamosh.
Kamosh, thank you so much. She was the one who's been trying to promote this movement. And it's something I admire, just this continued effort to do whatever is necessary just to draw attention and then make people maybe want to get involved, something that they can relate to, or it doesn't take away from them, it doesn't require so much effort. That's the thing too, right? Like, people don't want to be inconvenienced, or they want entertainment or something that's catchy, and so I thought that was really unique and a neat way to try to get involved in.
Absolutely. Why do you think, because I wonder about this all the time, how can Westerners just look on while Afghans are in this hellhole, like Afghan women particularly, where they can't work, they can't be educated beyond 6th grade, they're 2/3 of women run households are food insecure, just it's the conditions inside Afghanistan for women are horrible. Why do you think it's so hard to get anyone to pay attention to that?
Well, I hear a lot. It's just their culture. It's just their culture. Like this cop-out excuse, like, it is not their culture. I don't know where you get that from. You obviously not studied history of Afghanistan at all. And so that's just an easy way to be like, it's not our problem. It's a they issue. They obviously didn't want us there. They spent 20 years and billions of dollars, and look what happened. They were overcome immediately. And so it's just, there's no sympathy. That's gone.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, and there's no honor, like, they don't want to honor their commitments. They don't see the value in that. Like, you make promises to the people that helped us, like the interpreters or whatnot, and you just abandon them to be slaughtered.
Yeah. It makes my blood boil. Tell me about, so you've discussed that the Afghan women, like, from the aspect of, yes, they had that cultural, like, this is fine, this is whatever, but were they weak? The Afghan women that you saw? Tell me how they were strong that you saw.
So when I saw, just like standing up to me, not knowing anything about what's going on, was just remarkable. Like, just to stare me down. I have guns, I'm standing over you, you're in a complete vulnerable state, and she would not look away. And I just was so impressed by that, and that backbone of steel. You're surrounded, your whole village is being raided, essentially. Not like we're taking things, but we're going through your things, you know what I mean? And just completely unafraid. And I was like, I would not be of the same mindset as this woman. And I just couldn't believe it. It was just impressive. And that was just like one example. And even the elderly lady, honestly, like, looking back, she probably knew. How many wars did she survive? Like, what was her life like? So she probably knew the Taliban would come back in power. Like, all they're going to do is wait us out.
Yeah.
And so maybe she didn't want to give up the hopes of these young women by filling their head with stuff that doesn't apply to them. they're not in the same situation. Like, I don't know what her thoughts were for why she said what she said. You know what I mean? It could be like, you're right, like, this is just really the way it has always been.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a protective thing where, like, that's not our reality. And if you do succumb and try these Western ways, you're going to be punished.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point too. Or that you're just going to have your heart broken, because I've met many women online who, and I recognize those are a privileged subset of the women in Afghanistan, because they are allowed to use the internet on their own, which is not common, but they are just, they're so upset. Now, I don't think any of them, though, would give up what they had to, you know, be less upset. But I can understand that. Oh, my goodness. I can understand the feeling of, maybe it would have been better if my heart hadn't been ripped out of my chest and, you know, torn into shreds. And it might just be better to be happy with this, you know, the life the way it is.
But even the ones that did, I mean, if they were hiding intel and they were hiding weapons and they were assisting the Taliban, like, that's ballsy. Like,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Like, for you to be part of the opposition, like.
Yeah. Particularly when the Taliban care nothing for you, because you're just chattel to them. But, like, what else can you do? They're going to.
But if you have this cause in your heart and you feel like, you know, you're defending your country, your way of life, like, I get it.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I wish I could relive that deployment that you had through your eyes and just see it all, because it's valuable. And I think it's great that people have, you know, written about it. Do you plan to write about it? I mean, you're an excellent writer.
So I started a memoir. Thank you very much, by the way.
Woohoo!
Thank you. But it's more like vignettes, like little stories, like from the Havok Journal, AwareNow Magazine, plugging some of those in, and just random pieces from my journal, some poetry. But I had taken it to an editor to review and look through, and she's like, well, really, because it's not just about Afghanistan, it's about being a caregiver, children with disabilities, because it wasn't until my son was diagnosed with a terminal illness that I started having flashbacks. I started having nightmares. I'm like, what is happening? Like, it's been a decade.
Wow.
Like, why am I thinking of Afghanistan? Why am I being impacted this way? Like, yes, I was hypervigilant. Yes, I was paranoid. Like, when I got back, I didn't realize these were symptoms of something going on. Like, I had no clue.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until his diagnosis, like a decade later, that I really, really started having problems with my time. Like, I feel like I completely blinked out and, like, put all that I experienced away and just let it go.
Yeah.
But I had not. Like, I went to the petting zoo with my kid, and when I smelled, like, the goat poo, I was taken all the way back in time, and I had to step out to breathe. I was having almost a panic attack.
Wow.
And so the memoir goes into going from one battle, you know, as a veteran, or excuse me, as a corpsman, to becoming a mom and fighting a battle that I can't win.
Oh.
You know, he's going to pass. Like, that's just the nature of the disease. And how do you live with that? And how do you heal? Apparently, it was not okay after coming back from Afghanistan. And this traumatic event brought this other traumatic event back to life, you know?
Yeah.
And so just how do you move forward in a situation like that? The editor's like, that's not going to sell. You either talk about your disabled kid or you talk about the military. They're not interested in it's not, there's no crossover. Like, that's not going to be interesting to the community that you're trying to reach. And so I was like, well, so that's kind of on the back burner right now. But,
oof. I'm very excited about this. I just think it's vital, right? What you're doing is vital. These stories are important just for processing's sake, right? For what you're going through, because you never know who else is going through something similar. And they might, I mean, you could open up the world of one side or another to someone who only understands one side of it. That's so powerful. It's what I feel like brings us together as humans, right? Is that ability to empathize. And I really want to see that effort go far.
Well, thanks, Beth. I appreciate that.
You're very, very welcome. And I'm just really glad that we got to talk. Is there anything, I mean, I'm sure there are so many aspects of your time as a female searcher that we didn't get into. Is there anything, any story you want to tell, any vignette you want to bring up before we close out here?
There's so many that come to mind, just like random ones about, like when they tried, the gentleman, my peers, the other corpsmen, tried to sell me for 2 goats, a camel, and a broken rug, and the A&A thought like that was the best deal ever. And like, sure, yeah. I'm like, you guys stop joking. They think you're serious. Like, this is really how to do business. Like,
Holy cow!
Let's not. I'm married.
Oh my God.
My interpreter wanted to marry me. I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I'm already married. He's like, that doesn't matter here. That doesn't matter.
Right, you can be a second wife. Or a second, yeah, does that matter? I don't think people have multiple husbands in Afghanistan, do they? I'm pretty sure it only works the other way around.
And he's like, it doesn't matter. He doesn't matter.
Oh, he doesn't. There we go. He doesn't matter. You're here now. You're mine now.
Exactly the mindset, right?
Oh, that is so
so
funny.
So many like random stories like that, of course, come to mind. But honestly, it was a once in a lifetime experience. I'll never get to repeat it again. That was another thing too. The guys were always like, Doc, why are you smiling? It's so annoying. Like, you're always smiling. I'm like, because I will never do this again. Whereas this is your day in and day out. This is what you train for. Like, you're tired of it. You're over it. But like, this was momentous for me.
Yeah.
And so it was just an honor to have had that, to live through it, and to be able to talk about it. Because, there's just not a lot of literature out there, not really about women's experiences in the military, or especially in combat, And so I just want to do my part to share what knowledge I have with those who are interested.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. That's why I really want to see your book. And I'm glad that you're talking about it, in those forums, even if maybe the reception you get isn't the best. And maybe those women can understand that there is, like I said before, there is honor to go around for all who did what you all did. And it doesn't matter, nobody did it better or did it, everybody did it differently and at the right time when they were needed.
Absolutely. I love that perspective. I just think it's more the fear of stealing your title. Like, that will not change.
No.
You have that claim to fame. Like, that time and take that from you,
Right.
But there's always the fear of something being taken from you, I'm sure, is hard to cope with.
Sure, but there'll never be another FET. They are the FETs. You were the female searchers. The women at HKIA were the female search teams. You're all the women doing this incredible work, and you just have different names and different times and different, elements. Like, as you said, you were out beyond the wire, which, my gosh, I can't tell you how much I wanted to be in that position when I was an intel analyst. And I knew I would never, if I went, I was going to be a FOBIT, and I still would have given up an organ to go be a FOBIT when I was in intel as a civilian. I always want to remind people of that. I was never in the military, but I worked for the military. And so, yeah, I would have given anything to go be a FOBIT, and I would have given even more things to go get to experience Afghanistan outside the wire. So I would have been smiling too. You got to see something amazing. You got to be part of something incredible. And I'm just glad I got to hear a little bit about it today. So thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to tell everybody, as always, at the end of episodes, that if you're an Afghan listener, your story is valued here. I love to end every episode with a letter from an Afghan, but those letters have fallen off of late. So if you have anything to share about your circumstances, gosh, it could be during the Soviet period, it could be during the Taliban's first regime, during 20 years of war, during the fall, or during the last 3.5 heinous years under the Taliban again. It doesn't matter what period it's from. We want to hear your stories, and you can send those to the Afghanistan Project podcast at gmail.com. Lori, thanks again for talking about why you support Afghans today and what you did to support Afghanistan and our country back in the good old days. It was really special.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody, too, for sharing your time, for supporting the people of Afghanistan, supporting veterans. Tasha Kaur, and hope to see you again soon.